written a letter to Daddy. His address is heaven above.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, we have a lot of ground to cover today because, of course, as I'm sure everybody knows, the excitement is unending and there are all sorts of worms crawling out of the woodwork, let's put it that way. So without further ado, I am going to plunge in with what Warren Robertson says. And we're going to cover quite a bit of ground today, okay? It was on Australian television news tonight that Harry and Meghan have made a statement saying that they were forced out of the royal family. Warren Robertson, isn't it terrible? Can you imagine those mean and nasty racists forced Meghan and Harry out of the royal family because Meghan's a woman of colour and they were jealous of her, and they knew that if they didn't force Meghan and Harry out, Meghan and Harry's popularity would mean that the public would clamour for Meghan and Harry to be made king and queen, and Queen Elizabeth II would have had to vacate her throne, and Charles and William would have had to have been skipped over. And they thought, oh well, no, we can't allow such chaos to reign. So they forced Meghan and Harry out. Well, the reality, of course, is rather different. But I'm going to break it down because this is in response to Harry's lawyers making the claim in Ravik that, and the appeal to against the Home Office, that Harry, by virtue of being a son of the king, is entitled to IPP status and perpetual protection, as indeed are his splendid wife and his two lovely little children. Well, the first fly in that ointment is why is it that the York girls don't have perpetual and in fact have no protection and haven't for many years? Why is it that the senior royals, who of course are not only working members of the royal family, but also children of a monarch like Princess Anne, don't have perpetual 24/7 protection the way Harry and Meghan wanted, so that wherever they go, there'll be a fleet of cars and outriders, and everyone will say, oh, there come the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, they are so important. Shall we bow down and go? La, 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 la. Well, these cases have been sculpted by Harry's lawyers, with Harry's and Meg and Rachel Zane's input, because you need to remember Harry's married to a hotshot lawyer, Rachel Zane. Remember, the paralegal who couldn't pass her bar exams but somehow managed to always get everything right? That is when she didn't have her legs lizard lapping Mr. Adams, but we won't go there. They use the clay of claim to fabricate a narrative in an image that suits their purposes and bears no relationship whatsoever to reality. Let's be clear about that. It's on the one hand called making a case. Now, David Sherborne, who has roped Harry into an awful lot of the other stuff, has been very adept at pointing out to Harry that he could have claims that hadn't even occurred to Harry. And of course, Harry's been such a victim, such a victim. Well, Mr. Justice Nicklin was having none of it in the case against Associated Newspapers. But before we get to that, let us get to Mr. Justice Lane. Well, Mr. Justice Lane is the judge that is hearing Harry's appeal against the conclusions of Ravek and the Home Office and his protection. And Harry's lawyers have claimed that Harry was forced to step back from royal duties and leave the UK. Harry disputed the suggestion that was made during his legal challenge to deny him automatic police protection when he's in the UK, that he had chosen to stop being a full-time working member of the royal family. His barrister, Shahid Fatima, KC, was having none of it, and she needed to make it quite clear, quote unquote, that this was not the case. She actually read an excerpt from Harry's witness statement in which he said, and I quote, "It was with great sadness It was with great sadness for the both of us, that is, my wife and I, felt forced to step back from this role and leave the country in 2020. The UK is my home. The UK is central to the heritage of my children, and a place I want them to feel at home as much as where they live at the moment in the United States. That cannot happen if it is not possible to keep them safe when they are on UK soil. I cannot put my wife in danger like that, and given my experiences in life, I am reluctant to unnecessarily put myself in harm's way too." He seems to have forgotten that in January 2020, he announced that he and his wife were voluntarily, of their own volition and free will, leaving the United Kingdom to pursue financial independence in North America, and that they were going to be half in and half out. And the late Queen said, "No, you're not going to be half in and half out." So nobody forced him out of the country. For him to make that assertion is an absolute lie, a total lie. It contradicts his previous statement. Now, to get on to the other case that has been rumbling through the courts, because Mr. Justice Nicklin has just found against Harry in his application to get Associated Newspapers' defense struck out. Mr. Justice Nicklin made it clear that Harry may have issued a misleading statement. Oh dear, how does that one work? And wait for it. This statement was made that Harry may have made a misleading statement in his claim for taxpayer-funded security. Oh dear, recollections not only may vary, they do vary. But of course, Harry is allowed to have a faulty memory. Mickey, I beg of you. I need something to sort of keep my cold at bay. Can you run and get Mutty some Coke? After all, I don't want to sniffle constantly. Well, Harry and Meghan must either have no brains or have blown their brains. And we all know he's never had very many brains to begin with. But to make a misleading statement means, in the polite terms of the court, that Harry has been lying. You and I will call it a lie. Let the court call it a misleading statement. Because Harry has contradicted himself completely. He has Meghan to advise him, and gotta pull on those heartstrings. Remember? I'm going to write my letter to Daddy, and I'm going to call him Daddy because it's going to pull on heartstrings. Oh, go on, H. You know, when I was Rachel Zane, I used to advise my clients, come up with an alternative version of your former statement that is going to show the judge that he'd better give you what you want, otherwise you're going to be miserable and cry. Well, there's also the fact that Harry has lost Mr. Justice Nicklin in Harry's attempt to get Associated Newspapers' defense struck out, has lost ignominiously. Absolutely ignominiously. I'm going to read out what Mr. Justice Nicklin said. He dismissed Harry's bid to have Associated Newspapers' honest opinion defense to Harry's libel claim thrown out, and said, I quote, and incidentally, Mr. Justice Nicklin was the judge who was going to be hearing my case against the Mirror, the one that they had to settle and that cost them hundreds of thousands of pounds. Well, it didn't cost them. It cost the shareholders of Reach PLC, which owns the Mirror. But anyway, to not divert too much, Mr. Justice Nicklin said, overall, it is not fanciful that the defendant, that is Associated, will be successful at trial in demonstrating that the public statements issued on the client's behalf sought to promote the judicial review claim as his battle against the government's perverse decision to refuse to allow him to pay for his own security. There is a real prospect that the defendant, that is Associated Newspapers, will succeed in demonstrating that this was a misleading description of the issues in the judicial review claim, arguably promoted because it was hoped to show the claimant's judicial review claim in a positive light, whereas a portrayal of the judicial review claim as the claimant trying to force the government to reinstate his tax-funded state security risked his appearing in a negative light. Andrew Caldecott, who is Associated Newspapers barrister, and actually was against me when they lost in 1995 and had to settle. Oh, that poor man. He's so used to wearing brown lipstick. But he, in this instance, has had no need for slapping on brown lipstick, has said that the bid to end their defence without a trial was wholly without merit, and that Harry's whole case is built on sand, all true. He also said the claimant was responsible for press statements that said he would pay for security when he had never expressed any willingness to pay until after the judicial review. Poor Harry. It's so difficult when you have so many versions of the truth, none of which are the truth, but they're all your truth, and they conflict with each other. Jackie says, so Markle knowingly married into a racist family and wanted to stay part-time within that racist family. Very believable, Meghan. Yes, it is, Jackie, isn't it? Really believable. I mean, Meghan was perfectly happy to tolerate all those racists as long as it was in her worldly interest. And as soon as it wasn't, she discovered that she objected to their racist stance. So noble. Not at all opportunistic. Not at all. No. Loney says these names. Hi, Lady C. Is there any evidence the royal protection officers would be willing to protect Harry and his family? How could anyone expect highly trained officers to take a bullet for these disgusting traitors who have made it more dangerous for themselves and those protecting them via their own actions? That's a very valid point. And I don't think that it's one that either side is going to be bringing up in the Ravek case before Mr. Justice Lane. But it is absolutely a valid point. And why would any policeman who is, many policemen are not cynical. Many policemen join the police force to do good for the community. Not all, but many. I mean, we do have rotten apples in every barrel, but we also have many good apples. I know some of them. Why should even the opportunistic, indecent police officers put their lives in danger and possibly take a bullet for Harry or Meghan? Why would they do that? Why would they? Have Harry and Meghan shown us that they are of such value to civilization that they have a right to endanger the lives of others who will suffer the consequences of their derelictions of duty? I don't think so. You're absolutely right. Helen Bain says, Dear Lady C, what do you think of the announcement today from a source close to the Sussexes, quote unquote, that they got a save the date from the Duke of Westminster for his wedding and they turned it down? When the Secretary of the Duke of Westminster announced yesterday that the Sussexes were not invited to the wedding. The Duke of Westminster is the godson of the King. Those two are so transparent they think we are all thick. They are transparent. They are more transparent than freshly cleaned glass. They really are pathetic. But I think I need to make one or two points. One or two other people have asked if it's customary for members of the British aristocracy to send out save the date cards. No, it's not. It's absolutely not. It's an American custom, and I know of nobody who sends out save the date cards. That's number one. Number two, you don't send out save the date cards 8 months before an event. You don't. That's number two. Number three, you notice Harry and Meghan only made that statement after it leaked that they had not been asked to the wedding. First of all, how credible is it that a comprehensive list of a wedding has been compiled so early? That's number one. Number two, in whose interest was it to make Harry and Meghan victims by stating that the mean royal family didn't want them there, and the lily-livered Duke of Westminster has chosen rank over right? Because, of course, remember, Harry and Meghan are never wrong. This time it's fish that I smell. I'm not sniffling. I smell something fishy. Annie Moore says, Lady C. scabious account of how Harry didn't know his grandmother was dead until the plane landed after the announcement was made when he was in the sky doesn't make sense to me. I knew the Queen was dead at 4:30 British time. You'd announced it. Can you share with us your reasons for doing so? You must have had a very good reason. I had a very good reason. And I have to say, the decision was not easy to come by, and it caused me a degree of disquiet. But I was informed of antics behind the scenes that had caused problems, and that Harry and Meghan wanted to be there. Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up. Oh, Grandma Lilibet, I know, you're dying to talk, but you can't tell me that I was the most beloved of all of your family. Well, it's okay, you don't have to tell me. I can read your mind, and I'm going to tell everybody. Gail, guess what? I'm up at Balmoral, and guess who's croaking? Yeah, guess who's croaking? Gail. Oh, I shouldn't sound happy because I'm really very sad. I didn't know exactly what mischief Harry and Meghan would be able to get up to or come up with. But having spoken to one or two people, I knew that mischief was brewing. And the only way to prevent it was for me to make the announcement. The press was embargoed. But in fact, I have a feeling that the press was embargoed after I made the announcement and not before. I'm not sure about that. You see, I'm not a member of the press, so I don't know when the press embargo actually kicked in. But I obviously was informed very shortly after the Queen died, because she drew her last breath at 1437. They tried to keep her hair, so to speak, until 3:10, at which point they gave up hope and she was declared dead. My broadcast went live at 4:00. And if you look at it, you can see I was preparing people for the fact that the Queen was dying. And it's only at the very end that I just tacked it on, because I didn't have time to do anything over, that the Queen had actually died. I didn't know what they would do, but I knew they would do something. And the fear was not necessarily mine, but I was open to possibilities that Meghan and Harry might announce it to the detriment of everybody else and to their greater self-glorification. Or worse, Meghan might announce it. That was a considerable fear, that Meghan would hop in and somehow the word would slip out. I'm so distraught. They don't want me there. And, they excluded me because I'm a proud, confident woman of colour and so loyal to the family. And I was doing everything in my power to glorify them. And look at the way they've mistreated me. And I was Grandma Elizabeth, Lilibet's favorite relation. Well, I didn't know what they would do, but nor did anybody else. But there was the expectation that they would do something. And there were other expectations, which I cannot for legal reasons go into, which were rather more grotesque than what I have alluded to so far. So yes, I had a very good reason for doing it. I did it, and I was really nervous about doing it, but you see, I'm not press, so nobody could tell me what I could do and when I could do it. And yes, since people all over the world knew, is Harry seriously expecting anybody to believe that he hadn't even got wind of this? Harry and Meghan really think we're more stupid than we are. Cherry Cola says, Lady C, there is an interview where a journalist asked Harry if he cared that Chelsy Davy was African. His reply was, well, she's not black or anything. Thank you for that, my dear. Thank you so much. Need we say more? I don't think so. I think the statement speaks for itself. Melinda Riddle says, I work with mental illnesses every day. Neither Meghan nor Harry are mentally healthy. I would agree with that. I've lived with disordered personalities who certainly were not mentally healthy, because you can't really be mentally healthy if you have a personality disorder. And Harry and Meghan not only display symptoms and signs of personality disorders, she more than he incidentally, but they both display signs of mental ill health. Not when they are conveniently stating that they have mental ill health, but when they are hoping that we will think that they are mentally healthy and therefore in a position to preach at us, not even to us, at us. They display symptoms of mental illness. They're not mentally healthy. I agree with that. And both of them display discomforting signs of paranoia. So it's not only personality disorders we're speaking about, it is mental illness. I think we'll move on to what Ms. Joybird says. I am sure the letters were written after the Oprah interview. I am sure Meghan was trying to explain why she brought it up on Oprah. King Charles's reply was to verify that nothing was meant by the statements. Ms. Joybird, you're very perceptive. My understanding is that the letters that were exchanged after Oprah. Remember what the Queen said, the late Queen? She said the complaints and the statements, including about racism, would be taken seriously and addressed privately within the family. Well, they were. Harry says one thing. Meghan says, let's remain stum. Amid scabies says something else. Well, I am here to tell you, notwithstanding amid scabies' assertion in his book Endgame, of course it's the end of his game, and it's most likely finished off the Sussexes' game playing as well, thank the Lord. Scabies tries to make out that the letter was leaked to him via people affiliated to the king and hints at them being disaffected. It's absolutely not true. It's absolutely not true. I am reliably informed that the letters were not shown around the palace at all. And either the king leaked them himself or Meghan and Harry leaked the contents to scabies. I know who I think leaked what. You know, it's so ludicrous as to be unbelievable. Meghan had to explain why she had said what she said on Oprah. Those letters hang Meghan. They really do. But you know, Meghan's just, I've written a letter to Daddy. The address isn't heaven above. It's hell, otherwise known as Buckingham Palace. Oh, absolute hell. Especially if you're a proud, confident woman of colour. who's married into the family and elevated them to the extent that I did. But for me, do you think that they would have all the respect, like them say in Jamaica, all the respect that they have thanks to me? Oh, no, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. I'm just so fabulous. Somebody's mad, and I don't think it's you or me. Duality Huntress says, "Hi, Lady C. I have a couple of questions for you about Doria, if you don't mind addressing them. I think it was Meghan herself that talked about how she wasn't sure how to feel about members of the royal family speculating about the skin colour of her unborn child until she brought it up to Doria. The way Meghan framed it made it seem as if all the racial allegations she made were because of Doria. At least that was how it came across to me. My first question is whether or not other people besides Meghan have witnessed Doria making racially charged comments. Well, the whole world has witnessed it, my dear, or to rephrase that, everybody throughout the world who saw the Netflix show has seen that Doria herself is a racist, race-baiting pushfire who attributes to racism things that no sane, sensible person whose mind hasn't been addled would actually have come up with. To continue. My second question is, do you think it's possible that Meghan is lying or exaggerating about her mother's statements to throw her mother under the bus? Or do you think Doria is complicit in her daughter's grift? Much love to you and your fur babies. Very interesting question, Duality Huntress. Well, as I said, Doria on Netflix makes it absolutely clear that she is a race baiter who attributes to race that which no solid, sensible, rational, non-racially inclined person would come up with. Do I think Meghan is capable of throwing her mother under the bus? Well, she's thrown her father under the bus, and he's the one who supported her. He's the one who he's the one who spoiled her rotten. He's the one who took care of her while her mother was absent with leave. Yeah, absent with leave for the duration of the time that she was absent with leave, because her absence was very definitely something that, she didn't play hooky, let's put it that way. She definitely was absent by invitation. And of course, I would never have addressed this initially, but Doria has popped herself in the frame. Once you do that, you make yourself the focus of attention and a valid entity for observation and inquisition. So let's put it that way. So to answer the question simply, Doria could well end up being thrown under the bus by Meghan. But my understanding is that Doria has always dripped and injected poison into Meghan's air from Meghan was a little girl. Doria has always been the one who was Iago-like, really twisting Meghan's personality so that it would become as embittered as it now is. And for all we know, Doria could be playing out in the next generation her fears and experiences in a previous, more racially excluding time than Meghan has ever experienced. So Doria could be the worst sort of stage mother in quotes. She's not living through her daughter by giving her a wonderful career. She's living through her daughter by twisting and turning. Doria could well be living vicariously through Meghan, and vicariously has poisoned Meghan's perceptions and created complexes where there would have been none had Doria not been the race beta that she clearly is. So who knows to what extent, only Meghan would know to what extent Doria has twisted her observations over the years and skewed her perspective on life, so that because Meghan sees racism where there's none, and Doria sees racism where there's none. And my understanding is that skewed perception and perspective is something that Meghan has got from Doria, because when Meghan used to return home after she'd see her mother, she would have all sorts of chippy, nasty, tough, poisonous, entitled, vicious attitudes. And the belief was that Doria was setting up Meghan. Well, she might have set her up not only to be overly ambitious, but for failure. Because let's face facts, Meghan's situation is in some ways a terrible morality tale. Because look at what she has aspired to and achieved. And look at how she has thrown it away by being vicious and nasty and playing race cards when there was no need to do it, and being a victim when she wasn't a victim. Hi, PSI says, what about Queen Charlotte, wife of mad King George III? She was directly descended from Margarita de Castro y Sousa, a black branch of the Portuguese royal house, and Queen Elizabeth was her third great-granddaughter. Queen Charlotte was described in one published autobiography of the royal family's, it says physician, but he wasn't the physician, Baron Stockmar, where he described her as having a true mulatto face. He did. Some portraits of her show her as having a mixed appearance, where others made her look both white and also much prettier than she was. But then it was the job of royal portraitists to alter the appearances of their subjects to make them more regular and also more attractive. Well, Baron Stockmar was not actually the physician, insofar as I recall. He was the advisor. He was Prince Leopold of Saxe-Coburg, who was Queen Victoria's uncle, brother of her mother, the Duchess of Kent, uncle of Prince Albert, the Prince Consort, and he ultimately became King Leopold I of the Belgians. And Baron Stockmar was his advisor, and he ended up being the great confidant and advisor of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, because Prince Leopold left him here as their advisor, and then for the rest of his life, he was often giving them advice. I don't recall that he was the physician. You could be right, I could be wrong, but I could be just not recalling correctly. But he certainly was their advisor, political primary advisor, with Prince Leopold, then King Leopold. I have a sketch of the Reynolds portrait that hangs at Buckingham Palace of Queen Charlotte. And she looks as if she could have been, sorry, what used to be called a fair-skinned negress. Baron Stockmar did say that she had a true mulatto face, and people commented on the fact that she looked as if she was a fair-skinned negress. And there are statues of her in America where the slaves used to say that she looked as if she was one of their own kind. Because remember, many slaves were very fair-skinned and mixed, but as long as they were of slave mothers, they were born into slavery. For instance, Sally Hemings, who was Thomas Jefferson's great friend, let's put it at, and leave it at that. Well, the African blood came from Madragana of Pharaoh, who was an ancestress of Queen Charlotte through her mother, Princess Elizabeth of Saxe-Hildburghausen. She was many times over, through intermarriage, descended from Madragana of Pharaoh. Queen Charlotte's father was a minor aristocrat stroke royal. He was the Prince of Mirov. His father and son both became reigning dukes of Mecklenburg-Strelitz. But Mecklenburg-Strelitz was not an important duchy. It became more important as a result of Queen Charlotte marrying George III. I'm trying to be very precise here. I don't think any of them at the time had any care or concern as to whether a descendant of theirs had African blood. There was not the awareness of race then that there is now. In the 18th and 17th century, there was a lot less awareness of race than there is now. Because let's remember, at that time, there were far more white slaves in existence than black slaves. So slavery wasn't the issue. Just because the blacks in the West Indies and North America and South America were slaves didn't mean that there weren't white slaves. There were more white slaves than black slaves. And when I wrote People of Colour and the Royals, I was astonished to find how our perception of what we would have expected to be colour prejudice was completely a modern concept, and that there were black and brown people who were members of the aristocracy, elevated into the aristocracy, freed slaves who became fully paid up members of what used to be called high society, in Europe as well as in Britain. So I think we need to bear all of that in mind. But what is indisputable as well is that William and Harry have Indian blood. So all this nonsense about Meghan being the first member of the royal family to have any other background but Caucasian is utter rubbish. Eliza Keogh was half Indian. William gave his DNA to prove it, and I'm the person who revealed that to the world in 1992. And it took 25 or so years before the Indians woke up, and then it was plastered all over the front pages of the newspapers in India that William had given his DNA, and sure enough, he and Harry have Indian blood. The whole thing is preposterous, and only with considered information and actual fact will all this nonsense be put to bed. And Madragana of Pharaoh was African. There's no doubt about that. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please, can you keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. Okay, thank you so much. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and Godspeed.